absolutely an honor to be here. I'm so glad that Mary put this event together. I think this is something that needs to happen more, everywhere, all the time, for Orthodox Christians who want to increase their pro-life presence and network, and so this is really wonderful. Just a little background, if you don't already know me, I have been involved in the pro-life movement since high school. I would say my parents were involved when I was very young, and it just sort of always stuck with me, and I started a pro-life club in high school and then a pro-life club in college, and worked at a pregnancy center, organized some 40 Days for Life campaigns, organized a little March for Life in my college town. Just kind of did a lot all over the place. I've been really blessed with seeing a lot of different perspectives in the pro-life movement. And 4 years ago, I moved to California to work for an organization called Students for Life of America, and I helped young people start pro-life clubs all over California, Arizona, and Nevada. And so I was kind of being a resource, which is something that I didn't have when I was in school, so it was really great. So not currently working in the pro-life movement, but hopefully I'll be back full-time at some point eventually. So I was a little concerned maybe some of my talk might be, preaching to the choir. I was telling Henry, but repetition is the mother of learning, right? So, I mean, it never, hurts for us to discuss these ideas and kind of digest all of this over and over again, I think, and inspire each other. So, just thinking about why we're here and why we should care, I think that we could really describe what's happening in our nation as a permanent or just ongoing state of crisis. And, we see this all the time when there's a crisis or a natural disaster around the world, our attention is drawn toward that, and rightly so. As pro-lifers, we don't want to just ignore any other kind of horrific event or any other kind of deaths that occur, of course not. But our attention is drawn toward that as a nation. And meanwhile, there's this silent crisis, right, that is constantly happening, and just it seems like very few people are really aware and concerned. And I think even for those of us who are aware, sometimes it's really uncomfortable to think about, and it's easier to just push it aside and not deal with it, because if we really accept what's going on, we have to do something about it. And for a lot of people, there comes a moment when they realize, I've got to do something about this, and that's when they start doing something. But even, I feel, as was mentioned before by Matushka, every week, it's a struggle. It really is. When you have to go out to Planned Parenthood, it's not a fun thing. We're not called to do something fun. But if we have an eternal perspective to this crisis, I think, then we have to even look further than just the millions of lives that are being unjustly and violently snuffed out, because they are precious innocents and beloved by God, and we know that they're with God, right? But we have to also consider the millions of mothers and fathers who are participating in this sin, and the eternal consequences of that. And I think actually that's even a far greater concern, really, than the lives of the children. This is just something that a friend pointed out to me recently, and it really kind of altered my perspective that, this is an issue that has eternal consequences, and really we need to, this is one of the reasons that it's not just about the baby, it's about the mothers and fathers, not just because of the pain that they're about to experience, right, immediately, but it's going to be enduring if they don't repent, and, how can we help them prevent that? So what's more, this mentality that devalues human life and this temptation of abortion extends to those who call themselves Christian. And, for those in this room, most shamefully, those who are Orthodox Christian. According to a study in 2015, 54% of women who obtained abortions attended church at least once in the previous month. And this I heard recently, very shocking to me, from a 2014 Pew Research Center study. 53% of Orthodox Christians believe that abortion should be legal in all or most cases. That's over half. Whoa. Only 45% say it should be illegal in all or most cases. And there could be a lot of different reasons for this. There's a lot of misunderstanding, right, on the part of, I think, anyone who accepts that abortion is all right, regardless of their religious beliefs, and we could try to dissect the reasons for that, particularly in the Orthodox community. But ultimately, what good is our true understanding of theology? You know, we have this right belief, we believe we have the fullness of the faith as Orthodox Christians. If our people don't possess a true understanding of the morality that accompanies it and the fullness of that and the expression of that, right, and how we live our lives and how we treat our neighbor and what we do with our lives and with ourselves. So we have this crisis. We have it in our communities, in the Christian world, and specifically in Orthodox churches. And we have to respond to it in love. We have to respond to this crisis in love. And I would propose 3 essential ways that I think every person, every Orthodox Christian should be, in some regard, engaged in order to effectively respond to abortion. So the first one, of course, is pray. And hey, we do that a lot. We're Orthodox. We pray all the time. And of course, we want to start every good work with prayer. And as I think everyone in this room knows, the best way that we can pray about this issue is at the scene of the crime. It's right at the abortion clinic. Because then our prayer becomes this beautiful double effect of witnessing to those who are going in, who are walking by. And 40 Days for Life presents this wonderful focused effort of prayer. And I mean, we know 40 days is a transformational number, transformational period biblically. But this is something I think that as Orthodox, as we promote 40 Days for Life as Orthodox, we have to recognize that we can promote this to Orthodox people through an understanding that this is what I've heard described as positive ecumenism. And I mean, as Orthodox, we don't compromise our theology, right? We're not ecumenical in many ways, but on this issue, like Henry said, we are absolutely, bound at the hip. We can have this really beautiful effort where we have a joint effort to reach out and to turn the tide and to create a different culture. And so that's what I love about 40 Days for Life, because it allows us to work together in our unique ways. And so, everyone can go pray at the sidewalk. That doesn't mean we have to pray together, but we go pray with our Orthodox brothers and sisters, and the Catholics can pray together, and the Protestants can pray together. We're all working toward the same goal, But that's just something that I find I have to kind of describe and explain to some people who are a little hesitant, some Orthodox. So just something to keep in mind. It's really positive ecumenism. I think the epitome of that in the pro-life movement for us. But I have some really bad news for everyone in this room, which is that you don't have time to pray on the sidewalk. You're a modern American, which means you are busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. Nobody has time for this. And you will never have time unless you make an adjustment in your life, a change to your lifestyle. And I'm not asking anyone to quit their job. I wish I could. But I'm not asking anyone to sacrifice their family or their health or their mental health, or a lot of things that end up getting sacrificed when we get a little too overzealous in the pro-life movement. But I am asking you to find something that is worth sacrificing to free up time to do this, to pray and be involved. And I read recently that the average American spends over 24 hours per week doing what? Can anyone guess?
Watching TV.
Watching TV, which evens out to about 3.5 hours a day. So maybe not everyone in here watches 24 hours of TV every week, but if that's you, maybe you can give up 1 hour a week. That's less than 10% of that time as a bare minimum. Can you give up your favorite Netflix show or one of your 10 favorite Netflix shows? Can you give up something? What sacrifice can you make? If it's not TV, something else, And I think, we can't do it all, and a lot of people really only have time to focus in on one ministry, and it's not going to be this ministry for everyone. But for those who can and who are convicted, then they're going to have to give up something in order to participate. Really, it's just the way it is, and it's worth it, because when we show up, miracles happen, and it's by the grace of God. It's not anything that we can do alone. It's what happens when you show up and just leave it to God, to create change. as I know it was just mentioned, an abortion center locally that recently closed, but I was thinking about when I was not in college, but after college, I was leading a 40 Days for Life campaign in Livingston, Montana, which is this very small town. It's population 7,400, and when I was going to school, when I started going to school about 20-30 minutes away in Bozeman, which is just kind of through the mountain pass, bigger town, 45,000. But I heard about this abortion clinic that had opened up, and it turned out that there was a woman, her name was Dr. Susan Wickland, and she was a rather notorious abortion provider. She had been performing abortions since before they were legal, and she actually has a book. I'm trying to remember the title of it, but anyway, she wrote an autobiography. I've read it, and just kind of detailing her experience. And unfortunately, she became involved in performing abortions because she had had an abortion when she was young, and it was a terrible experience. It was just the kind of the stereotypical, cold table, the doctor comes in and doesn't say anything, and just she feels violated, and that, right? The story you hear all the time. But unfortunately, instead of realizing that she felt so terrible because abortion is terrible, she decided she really wanted, because she cares so deeply about women and has this misplaced sense of compassion, she wanted to help them to have a better experience. And so she became an abortion provider to provide that compassionate experience, supposedly. Anyway, so I think when she opened this small clinic, she'd had this long career, and it was kind of her, I don't know if it was her retirement project or what. She moved out to Montana, bought a place in the mountains, and then opened this little clinic, and everybody from all over, from other states even, would come. And it was just, you kind of got the feeling, like watching interviews with her or reading anything she had written, it just seemed like she was the kind of person who was going to be performing abortions until she was, using a walker, until she was in a wheelchair. Like, she would never stop, her fierce commitment, fierce misplaced sense of compassion for women was so strong. And it was it was kind of a depressing situation, because we just didn't think she was ever going to close, But anyway, so we did a couple of 40 Days for Life campaigns, and then I ended up moving away, and there was no one to take over. And I had really been able to put a lot of time toward it. It was really great. It was kind of part of my job at the pregnancy center, was to coordinate this. And so when I left, it was like, we've made so much progress. We got all these churches involved. There's so much momentum. Now what? So there were a couple volunteers that sort of came together, and they didn't have any time, but they were just going to try to do something and just carry it on. And then same kind of situation. Maybe 2 weeks before it was supposed to start, I got a phone call that it had completely, unexpectedly closed, and it was just a shock. I couldn't believe it. And so instead of our opening rally, we had a celebration closing rally before it started. Yay. It was amazing. It was just, and it just was very humbling, because it just reminded me how little faith I had. None of us believed that this was possible, and it happened. And so that kind of thing can happen, and we never know, and that doesn't mean every abortion center closes, after a couple of 40 Days for Life campaigns, but we're just called to show up. That's all we're called to do. And actually, I want to share another story about just showing up, which is something I was just talking to a pro-life colleague the other day, and she was telling me that she had been in San Francisco she was there for a rally or protest outside of an abortion center, I think outside of Planned Parenthood. And while they were there, they saw the medical waste truck pull in that was there to pick up the body parts from the aborted babies. And so they went to the headquarters of that company and protested. They held a demonstration. And it eventually led to a conversation with the head of that business. And the result of that conversation was that they actually canceled their contract with Planned Parenthood, or whatever the abortion center was, and that included, I think she said, 40 different locations.
Wow.
Just incredible. And she said, we didn't expect this. We had no idea. All they did was, they just showed up, They just kind of, they did one thing, and it led to another, and it led to this incredible result,
And if they can't dispose of the babies, then they that means they have to close.
Well, they got to look for a new contract.
Right.
They got to figure something out. It's
Right.
not a pretty
Right.
position to be in for them, that's
Right.
for sure. Yeah. So that's the first thing, is pray and be willing to just show up. I think our second way that we can respond and should respond to abortion is to serve. And this kind of ties in. But I recently learned that when my parents were newly married Protestants, they're now Orthodox. My dad is a priest now, actually. But they aspired to be missionaries, as it seems is really common with young newlywed Protestants, which is beautiful. But they had a realization that they could be missionaries here in their own backyard without leaving the country through the pro-life movement. And so that for a while, that was kind of their focus. That was their ministry. And we're called to be the hands and feet of Christ, right? And this has to, as everyone here knows, this has to include ministering to those who are at risk for abortion, those who are pursuing abortion. Prayer should always be our first response, but it can't be our only response. And this is something that we really have to be able to explain to people, that we, if we see a man dying in the street, we're not just going to say, oh, let me pray for you and continue on our way, right? We're going to feed him and clothe him and care for him and pray for him. It goes hand in hand. So how do we serve? I think absolutely the first thing we do is we, again, go out to the sidewalk. And sidewalk counseling is something I'm just learning to do. And I've sort of tried to make a commitment to go once a week, and that's actually making me more confident, very, very slowly but surely. And it's not easy, and this is something else that we have to understand and accept and be willing to let people know. It's not easy, and it's rewarding. And again, that's the calling of the Christian life, right? We're not called to an easy life, but to deeper rewards. And it's just amazing. If you read stories of women that have chosen abortion, so many will say when they were in crisis, if they just they just had so much pressure around them. And of course, when you're pregnant, your hormones are going crazy, and they're in crisis, and they say, if I just had one person supporting me, or just one little tap in the right direction, then I could have chosen life so easily. And so when we're not when nobody's on the sidewalk, we're missing those opportunities to just be that one person who's supporting them, who's encouraging them in the right direction. And anyone can do this. And you don't have to be a counselor, you don't have to be a pro. I feel like if I can attempt sidewalk advocacy, anyone can, really. But it's something that's very intimidating to people. It's intimidating to me. And we have to, I think, as we try to bring new people in, we have to make it accessible to people and help them understand that it's fine to just bite off a little bit to chew and just start small, and that's fine. And for myself, I tend to have an all or nothing personality where I get overwhelmed because I can't do everything that I want to do and that I think should be done. And that can make it harder to just do something. But when you come to the realization, again, that you're just called to do something, just a little bit, that's enough, just go. Just show up. That's enough. And something else that we have to keep in mind, I think, is to always have accountability and community, and not try to do things alone, because it makes it, again, overwhelming. Trying to do sidewalk counseling and showing up without anyone else there with you, it's going to be a lot more difficult. You're going to want to leave a lot sooner. But going with someone, planning ahead, going through training so you feel confident, all these things can really help us. And also, how else can we serve? Of course, we can serve women in pregnancy resource centers. And I really find it incredible that there's over 2,000 pregnancy centers in the country, and only 780 some abortion centers, 150 of which are in California, so that's nearly 20% of them, which is amazing. But why, if there's so many pregnancy centers, why don't we hear about them more? We hear about the abortion clinics, right? We don't see advertising for pregnancy centers on every billboard and ads everywhere. It's because they need our help. They really do. And even when you see pregnancy centers that, you go to their banquet and you see all the support that they have from the community, and they might appear to be thriving, but I'm sorry, a pregnancy center is not thriving unless it is actively taking away a lot of business from the abortion center. And we have to help them accomplish this goal. We need to help them not just through, volunteering, working in the clinic during office hours, but anything that we can offer, or do we have experience with plumbing or cleaning or accounting? How can we help the pregnancy center cut down on their costs? And how can we help them build up their budget so they can advertise? Again, we look at Planned Parenthood advertising, it's everywhere because they have these billions of dollars from rich people that have an agenda, and we don't have that on our side. But I think that we really need to step it up as pro-life people in terms of supporting our pregnancy centers. And again, I think that involves sacrifice, of our time and even of our money. I mean, our church is supporting their local pregnancy center. I think they should be. The average American spends $3 a day on coffee. That's $1,000 a year. Can we give up $5 a month to our local pregnancy center? What can we do? I think that we need to be involved in some aspect of supporting our pregnancy center and asking what their needs are, So those two really tie together. But the third aspect that I want to talk about, the third way that we can respond to abortion in an effective way is by learning how to respond to abortion on a personal level when we're encountering people that disagree with us. And I really see a really dire need for education in dialogue skills and how to talk about the issue, how to respond to arguments for pro-life people. I recently spoke with somebody who thought that it was just hopeless to talk to pro-choice people because they clearly think it's okay to murder babies and there's just no arguing with somebody like that. And I used to feel the exact same way. I kind of felt like, I'll present the case. If they don't agree with me, I've done my job, and what else can I do but pray for them? But it's more complicated than that, because pro-choice people, first of all, we have to understand the nuances that exist in their position, and we have to understand that, again, they have really a misplaced sense of compassion most of the time, and we have this really interesting common ground with them that we both really care about women and we want what's best for women. And so if we can start there, and then really get to the root of what makes them pro-choice, we can be really effective with changing their mind, or at the very least with reframing their perspective of what a pro-life person is, what kind of a person a pro-life person is, because they're pro-choice people are fed this really steady diet of from the media and from a lot of places that says terrible things about pro-life people. And so it's so important, so crucial for us to present ourselves with love and compassion to them, and compassion towards their perspective, and an open-mindedness that we're willing to have a conversation with them and try to understand where they're coming from. So I could spend an hour just talking about pro-life apologetics and dialogue tips, but I won't do that, and some of you have already heard me do that, so I won't do that. But if we as pro-life people are not effective in what we say and do, which is changing hearts and minds and saving lives, right, then we're wasting our time. And so I think this applies to the tactics we use outside the abortion center. If screaming at someone that they're a murderer and they're going to hell, no matter how much we believe that's true, if that's not working and that's not making them leave and turn around and come out, which believe me, no one is ever going to walk out of an abortion clinic because someone called them a murderer, yelling across the parking lot. If that's not working, maybe we need to do something else, because our goal isn't just to present the truth and leave it there. No, our goal is to bring people along and help them and save them. So when we talk about abortion, there's a lot of true arguments against abortion that are bad arguments because they're not convincing. And I'll give a really simple example, and I don't mean to insult anyone who has this bumper sticker, and I used to have this bumper sticker on my old car, but for example, the slogan, "Your mom chose life." To tell a pro-choice person, well, your mom chose life, so like, therefore, why aren't you pro-life? That doesn't work. It's not that simple. If it was that simple, then everyone would be pro-life, right? Like, that's just obvious their mom chose life. It's a lot more complicated than that. And so we tend to have this language barrier, communication barrier, where we're speaking different languages and speaking past each other when we communicate with pro-choice people. So we need to understand the language that they're speaking, understand where they're coming from, and that they don't usually hate babies and think abortion is awesome. They're misguided, and we have to understand the different types of pro-choice arguments, the different motivations that come for people to be pro-choice. So, for example, all pro-choice arguments, you could make the case that all pro-choice arguments fall into one of three categories. Either they assume the unborn are not human beings, which is scientific, right, biological, or they assume the unborn are not persons, which is more of a philosophical or legal question, or they admit that the unborn are human, or that they are persons, but we can kill them anyway. And that third one, actually, I would say, is becoming the most common category. And that is because our society and our culture very strongly values autonomy and bodily rights and being able to do whatever I want. And so most pro-life people don't realize that third category exists. And we just assume that, in fact, I would say most pro-life people think that everyone falls into the first category, that all pro-choice people don't know that the unborn are physically, fully, biologically human. And that's just not true. So I really can't get into how to respond to those, but I have a really great suggestion for anyone who has not done this yet, which is to go to a website called equalrightsinstitute.org, or .com, I think it's .org, and check out the Equal Rights Institute, which is an organization that, if you know me, you've heard me talk about them before, but they're really wonderful because they help pro-life people better respond to pro-choice arguments. And I think until more of us can effectively do this, then we're losing ground. We really, really need to be able to have a conversation with someone where we can effectively explain our position and ask them what their position is to understand it, and then be able to kind of sort that out and show them where the differences lie, and hopefully be convincing, and at least clarify the issue in their minds. And that's a lot of times something that I think we can do as pro-lifers, is just to help a pro-choice person understand the implications of their view and understand where they're coming from. So I highly recommend equalrightsinstitute.org. If you have not heard of them yet, I think they're the absolute best pro-life apologetics organization out there.
Equal Rights what?
Equal Rights Institute. Yeah, they have a lot of blogs. They have videos, podcasts. There's actually also a program that you can purchase if you would like. You can get a single person membership. I think it's $35 for a year, and which will allow you access into, I think it's 12 or 15 modules that go through the whole thing in depth, kind of responding to every possible angle of pro-choice arguments and how to understand them and respond to them better. Or a group, you can get like a membership for a group and do it kind of as a study, like with a group. Like you would do like a Dave Ramsey class or something, just spend an hour a week just watching and discussing together and learning together. So I highly recommend that. So those are my 3 suggestions, and I know we're going to just discuss some of these more in depth, so thank you so much.
Yay!